Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, in today's video, I want to talk about expressions that have to do with obligations and recommendations and prohibitions and so forth. I call it. I have a handout. Inshallah, I will copy and paste it below. Called الأحكام بالانجليزية. What I mean here is I'm using the expressions from usul al-fiqh, right? الأحكام الشرعية and their definitions, and then I want to use those to explain what words you should be using to express each quote-unquote ruling, right? Whether it's an obligation, whether it's a prohibition, a recommendation, and so forth. Because people get confused. What I notice here is, what I have noticed over the years is that students get confused with terms like you have to, you don't have to, you can, you can't, you must not, and so forth. So let's go over these one by one. The first one on the list usually is wajib, okay? Obligatory, something you have to do. And in the books of usul al-fiqh, they say, ma yuthab ala fi'lihi wa yu'aqab ala tarkihi, right? You're rewarded if you do it, and you're punished if you leave it off. Or the best way to understand it here is that there will be negative consequences. Something bad will happen if you leave it off, right? So you have to be at the exam on time, right? Because then otherwise you won't get in and you'll fail. Right? You must be at the exam on time. That's what we say. We say you have to, you must. You have to do your homework, you must do your homework. You have to be on time, you must be on time. So those are the expressions we use. The next one that comes up is recommended, right? It's recommended, what they call in Arabic mustahab or mandub. And what we mean by that is يثاب على فعله ولا يعاقب على تركه. Alright? You're rewarded if you do it. I mean, it's good for you if you do it, but there are no negative consequences if you leave it off. Nothing bad's gonna happen to you if you leave it off. It's just better if you do it, right? So we say you should or you ought to, right? You should eat these foods. You ought to eat these foods. Sorry, I'm looking at the camera now. I'm trying to look at my phone, look at the camera at the same time. I apologize. That's how it works. You should visit this person, you ought to visit this person, and when you do it like this, this is the meaning of recommendation, okay? Now the third one, the middle one, is what we call mubah in Arabic, or jaiz, and this means that there's no reward or punishment either way. There's no positive consequence or negative consequence. لا يثاب على فعله وتركه ولا يعاقب على فعله وتركه, right? And here we say you can or you don't have to, right? You can put saffron in your rice, right? You don't have to put saffron on your rice. You can. You don't have to put milk in your coffee. You can, right? There's no ruling, there's no consequence either way. It doesn't really matter. Then we move on to the next one, which is what they call in Arabic makruh. What we'd say disliked or discouraged. And here what we mean is, use a term from Arabic, from usul al-fiqh, يثاب على تركه ولا يعاقب على فعله, right? It's better for you if you leave it off, you're rewarded if you leave it off, but you're not punished. There's no negative consequence from you doing this thing. It's just better if you don't. So here we say you shouldn't, you should not do this, or you ought not to do this, right? If we stick to the ruling that you should not break the infinitive, you ought not to do this, right? You ought not to eat these foods. You should not eat this thing or drink this thing or go to this place. You should not, you ought not to. Okay? And then the last one is this is where we get some confusion, is when we say something is haram or mahdur, i.e. it's not allowed, it's impermissible, it's illegal, or whatever the term is. This is yu'aqab ala fi'lihi wa yuthab ala tarkihi, right? It's better if you leave it off, but there are negative consequences if you do it, right? You will be punished, or something bad will happen to you if you do it, right? So we'd say you must not be late. You must not be late, right? You cannot be late, right? It's the opposite. You have to be on time. You have to be on time means you cannot be late. You must be on time. You must not be late. If you're late, you're going to miss the flight, or you're not going to get into the exam, or whatever it is. right? There will be negative consequences to you not doing this, or to you doing this, right? Because we're talking about that which is impermissible. So where people get confused is the issue of must not, have to, don't have to, and can and cannot. So must and must not, this is obligation. This is wajib and haram, or wajib and mahdhur, right? You must be on time. You must be on time. Yajib alayk, right? You must not be late, right? You must not be late, right? يجب عليك أن لا تتأخر, right? So that's that. Sorry, I'm just getting distracted by people walking around me. That's how it works. Must and must not. Then have to and don't have to. That's different. If I say you have to, that's wajib. You have to be on time. يجب عليك. You don't have to. That means it's mubah. You have a choice. You don't have to do this. It's not an obligation. If you want to, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Right? It's your choice. So this is the difference between wajib and mubah. Wajib and jaiz. You have to, you don't have to. And then the last one that people get confused with is can and can't. Right? So can't means yahrum alayk. Right? It's like you must not, you can't. Yahrum alayk. Right? It's يجب عليك أن لا تفعل. يجب عليك أن لا تفعل. That's what that means. So the opposite of that is you can. You can means jaiz. It's permissible if you want to. So you don't have to, you can. It's the same thing. So I hope that's clear. Inshallah, I will put these notes below so you can read them, so that it lists the confusion. I thought there was some benefit in this. This is how I like to explain it sometimes, is to show, take these definitions from Usul al-Fiqh, because they're very, very clear, and compare them with the expressions. And from my experience, students, they get it after that. So I hope this is beneficial. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.